Takopi's Original Sin. Its anime has finally released. It's not going to be a full season, it's only 6 episodes. And before I start anything, I'm putting my own trigger warning here. This story, this anime is messed up. Like, truthfully, it is a gross story to experience. So much so that I can barely even talk about what happens in here. So, depiction of these very, very traumatizing things is incredibly vivid and relentless. If that's not for you or up your alley, please do not watch this. And do not watch me talk about this. A handful of years ago, this manga released, and originally I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I loved the first chapter, the next couple of chapters after I wasn't really vibing with, but then it kind of pulled it all together towards the end. By all definitions, it's a short story, and it is a very, very brutal one. It doesn't hold back. I think if you're here and you have watched the first episode, you know exactly kind of what I'm talking about, and I was concerned, but also rather surprised that a story as short and controversial as this now has a 6-episode anime season. These episodes are a little bit longer. The first episode is about 40 odd minutes, and it does not shy away from anything, which I want to say is kind of a first. I thought they would go about censoring some things, or they would maybe be a bit more playful or a bit more, I guess, artistic for the interpretation, so to speak. But instead, they decided to respect the original work and show it within its rawest nature. On one hand, I can appreciate that, and on the other hand, I'm shocked that they even allowed it. There's a lot of things that I think this story does really, really well, and it never really emphasizes its most controversial points as just shock value, which is something that I personally really dislike. When you're handling sensitive topics like this, using or utilizing them as just shock value feels really pathetic. Especially if you don't go back to explore those things or you're just using it to garner a reaction. These topics are very much real. They are very much traumatizing. They're very much hard to engage within. So to navigate that, both narratively as well as now animation, is quite a difficult hurdle. For the first time, I am seeing a genuine trigger warning before I watch an anime, which is surprising, but very much obviously needed. Because of how things can quickly get thrown into a shock value, I was worried that if this was in the wrong hands, or if this wasn't done with the utmost respect and attention, that it could go down that path. But I am happy to confirm that is not the case. Instead, what they have done has resulted in one of the most uncomfortable viewing experiences and one of the most gross. There's a lot of things that bring manga to life. Like, it's not just the animation, your color palette, your voice acting, your music. All of this provides a tone. Whatever tone that you're trying to go for is going to be emphasized by these different points. When you have a story as dark, depressing, and traumatizing as this, naturally you come to the assumption that a tone would be kind of melancholic, slow, and eerie, and draining, like a soft violin or a piano. It is not that at all. Instead, it is upbeat, incredibly playful, and never really sits within that melancholy for too long. To me, that is surprising. Not only do I think it makes the experience more uncomfortable with the voice acting and the upbeat music that they play, or the animation that's woven between it, or even just the voice of Happy and how it's approached, it all serves a much bigger purpose rather than emphasizing a specific scene. So really, any sort of accidental shock value that you could fall into and being very disrespectful is kind of just thrown out the window. It's gone. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Now you just have to sit through 40 minutes of something very, very uncomfortable. And the rest of the season is most likely going to be like this. This type of approach fits perfectly with this story because of the little alien creature that it has. So all of the upbeat and playful aesthetic usually comes from them. They are the ones narrating this story. They are trying to change a lot of these traumatizing moments, but they're also trying to understand. If you don't know anything about the story, let me just fill you in really, really quick. It's very, very simple. There's a young girl called Shizuka, and she's getting horrendously bullied. Really, really bad. And she has a dog called Chappie, the only good within her life. And she comes across a little alien creature, which ends up being called Takopi, right? Little octopus squid guy. Takopi is all about happiness and spreading that joy and cheerfulness throughout the world. That's their goal as an alien species. But Takopi doesn't really understand humans, nor does he understand depression, nor does he understand the severity of the situations that are going on. So he's trying to fix a lot of these things in really backwards ways, and you just can't expect him to fathom it. One of the most powerful moments within here is when he experiences it for the first time himself, being abused against, and it's a very weird situation that kind of comes together to try and protect Shizuka. That's kind of Takopi's overall goal, to not only make her happy and make her smile, but to obviously protect her by trying to fix things. But the way he fixes things is very much one-dimensional and systematic, so it tends to fail and backfire until Takopi experiences it himself. After that, a lot of things change. Takopi is very much scared. He's now halfly within the shoes of what Shizuka experiences every single day and doesn't really know what to do. From here, things derail incredibly rapidly, and all I will say is, for Shizuka's dog, bless his soul. And this obviously completely breaks Shizuka. This is a very simplified version of the first episode. They do a very great job in pacing it, a great job in getting you connected, a great job of showing Takopi's perspective, but the rest of the story is kind of the bigger issue, I would say. Things start to change very, very rapidly, not only because of Takopi, but because of how Shizuka starts to act. And there's a level of understanding that I hope the community can have for this, or at least trying to hold on to the full picture of the story. This is more than just bullying. This is more than just being abusive. This is emotions that are being kind of manipulated and warped by external forces like parents and guardians and people that should know better, and inflicting that hate and trauma and abusiveness onto their children. I already see the early signs of people starting to take sides, but please just try and be a little bit, I guess, open to the idea of understanding, because there is more to the picture and more to just these characters, these children as a whole. What I will say is that none of these characters, these children, should have to go through, obviously, any of this. It's the most disgusting, gross feeling thing that you can watch. And when you start to see the rest of the story trickle in with why they act the way that they do, or what they've been through, or what they've experienced, it starts to make a little bit more sense. Episode 1 was a difficult watch. It didn't shy away from anything. It showed things in full clarity, full picture, and really just does it. Doesn't really beat around the bush at all, which, again, the most surprising thing. The show is meant to make you feel uncomfortable. It's not something that you're going to put on and have a cheerful time with it. It is very much depressing, very much emotionally heavy, mentally heavy, and it's not going to be for everybody. But I can confidently say, just based on the studio and how they approached the first episode, that the rest of this season should be handled with a lot of respect and a lot of care, which is the biggest thing that I want from this. The core of Takopi's story can be rather controversial, just with how it's depicted and with what certain characters do in the future. You will see it, and I'm curious to see how the community kind of reacts to it and how they understand it. Hopefully within the full picture, from start to finish, pulls itself together similar to the manga, and that perspective becomes more understandable. If you do plan to watch this week to week, I would highly recommend to have something very upbeat to watch after it. This is not something that you really want to linger on. It's not something you really want to watch, or at least keep in the back of your mind. Have a palate cleanser, something upbeat. I recommend K-pop Demon Hunters, or Gachi Akuta, whatever other anime is coming out this season, Danadan season 2. There's so much other stuff out there that you can use as a chaser to take your mind off this stuff. To finalize my thoughts on this first episode, just a quick checklist of everything. I think the animation is gorgeous. It's perfectly aligned with how Takopi's manga looks, which kind of off-putting, but very, very stylistic and creative. The Happian creature and the backstory and how they showcase that was really, really beautiful as well. The anime opening and ending is gorgeous. Very peculiar, specific songs to tonally catch your attention. But then obviously everything in between, from the voice acting, which is superb. The color work is kind of grossly eerie and very charcoaly. I don't know if that makes sense, but it feels like a chalkboard in a way, where it feels kind of incredibly rough and intentional and dirty, which when you see some of these certain panels, it makes a lot of sense. Like there is a lot of work going into how this is visually depicted so it never breaks that tonal bubble that it's going for. And then the cherry on top is the music. Like it's so lighthearted and bubbly. It is like a small faint tint of like something sinister underneath, and you can clearly hear it, but at the same time, because it's cheerful, you never really like, oh my god. I cannot recommend this directly to you. If this is something that you feel comfortable with watching, something that you want to experience, maybe you want to go read it instead, please do read it at your own safety, at your own discretion. It's very much overwhelming and emotionally taxing. Give yourself a breather, give yourself a chaser, try to enjoy something positive afterwards. That is what I can recommend.